Thank you, Amanda. Right, hello everyone. My name is Chekfoung. So I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. I am a practitioner turned academic, and now I am managing the MSc Applied Project Management course at the University of West London. So prior to my academic career, I used to work in various IT projects, designing and implementing IT solutions for stakeholders in multicultural and multinational settings. So today we are going to discuss why are research skills vital in the project management industry, particularly in the post-pandemic, the post-COVID-19. So we will first look into the setting of a virtual work environment and followed by how to set up an efficient virtual team and how research skills embed in the virtual setting. And then we will close the discussion with any questions that you have. Right. So first of all, before we move on to look into research skills, I think it's vital that we look into how organizations actually react to COVID-19. So why project management remains relevant even during the crisis. So we can explain this scenario by using something what we call the organizational onion. So organizational onion is an organizational analysis to study an organization existing states from the informal, formal, and technical perspective. So some of you may ask me, so what does this mean? So the informal, as you can see, the informal layer here refers to the social perspective, such as the culture and norms. Okay, and the formal states relates to the rules and procedures in an organization, and in contrast, the technical layer refers to the technical system that we can put in place. Therefore, we can use this analogy to explain how an organization should respond to this pandemic and hence understand why project management remains relevant. So from the informal perspective, as you can see here, so we can see there's already a change in working culture. For instance, remote working, so such as like working from home, has already becoming a culture. And then some of you may, do half of the work in the office and then half of the work online. It is the same over here as well. Like most of us, at the moment, we are still working mostly from home, but then back in, when it comes to September, we will be doing half of our work, half of our teaching in the uni, and then half of it will be, working from home. Then after that, if let's say that from the formal perspective, due to the changes caused by the informal perspective, okay, then we can see changes such as organization has to change their strategy and then have to change their business processes, define and schedule a plan to manage chaos, because you can see lots of changes coming in just from the fact that working online, maximizing resources and control cost, and then manage the changes in quality and encourage teamwork and, lesson learned. And then when it comes to, the technical perspective, okay, so when it comes to the technical perspective, if we want to make the change happen or to respond to the environment, to the crisis itself, then we may need to have technical system in order to support the change. And in overall, this is also the reason why we launch projects in order to manage the change. Okay, so that is also the reason why project management is important, particularly in this pandemic. So virtual team or working virtually is not a new concept, okay, or remote working is not a new concept. But then, however, due to the lockdown, we have seen there is an increasing shift to virtual working environment. So for instance, in primary care, I'm pretty sure that this is also the similar thing happening in Singapore as well. So instead of visiting our GP, we can now see our doctors online. And then in education, so we're switching to online delivery mode. And then And as for now, with the lockdown eases as well, organizations start moving into a blended working environment, which is a combination of working from home and working at the office. Then before I discuss a bit further about virtual team research skills project management, I think it's worth that we look into the future workforce, which has a lot to do with Industry 4.0. I'm pretty sure that most of you all sitting here also heard of the concept of Industry 4.0. So in Industry 4.0, we're talking about organizations must develop their digital capabilities, such as interconnectivity, automation, machine learning, and how to analyze the real-time data in order to achieve the competitive advantage. And then now with the COVID-19 as well, there is an increasing need for building the digital workforce capability. And all in all, this contributes to the future digital projects, opportunities, and the work setting is most likely in a virtual environment. Then after that, if we know that the trend is moving virtual, so how do we set up an efficient virtual team? So echoing the government message, whenever you can, we should work from home. Hence, we can see that there is an importance of virtual team management, particularly in the current situation. So whichever projects you're managing, there are always 4 principles that you can look into, such as forming, storming, norming, and performing. So in terms of forming a virtual team, so here we are talking about giving the access to your team members. So all team members will require the means of communicating with and working with other team members, having, have their all access to the email or any collaboration tools that are required. Then after that, in terms of storming, this is where we need to get our team members to gel together. Okay, so here we are talking about, because obviously we can't do our face-to-face anymore. So do we have an online facility for our team members to actually debating about the task, or having efficient communication that will encourage the buy-in and input from all stakeholders. And then when it comes to norming, which means that now we want to create a norm for our virtual team. So how do we do that? And then here we are talking about the members, the team members will need to have the access to the information in order for them to do their work. So how do we put in the information in the collaboration tool? So for example, some of you may using, SharePoint, OneDrive, so on and so forth. So all this type of online facilities. And lastly is performing. So performing stage could only be achieved when the team members could gel together, they know what tool they would like to use, and then performing is where each team member start generating knowledge. And then by using the collaborative tools as well, all this knowledge will then contribute to the task itself. Then moving on, when we talk about virtual team as well, depending on what is the objective, and then we could choose a variety of collaboration tools, such as Microsoft Teams and Zoom. For example, the Zoom that we're using right now for virtual facilitation or events. And then we have Jira, Trello, Basecamp, and then these are some of the project management tools that we could use in facilitating the virtual projects. And then one thing that is also important as well is when setting up a virtual team, it's not so much about, it is very important that we have an online tool for our tasks, etc. But the employees or the team members' well-being is also very important. So we can use something like Kahoot for virtual team building and learning. And then if you want to be a little bit more advanced, you could also use something called Meeting VR if you would like to meet in the virtual reality. Then, so now I have talked about the background of virtual team and then why it is important, and then how do we set up a virtual team in this, during this pandemic. Then the next thing is, so project management. So we talk about, we launch project in order to manage a change in the virtual setting. And then some of the key project management skills here, we are talking about the soft skills, the hard skills. And the main thing I would like to talk about today is the research skills. Okay, so the soft skills, as you all know, such as communication, negotiation, conflict management, which is very important, and how do you build an efficient team. So this all relates to the soft skills itself. But then when it comes to the hard skills, this is where we are talking about cost management, time management, the scope management, quality management, change management, or risk management. Then thirdly, the conceptual skills, or what we call the research skills. This is actually referred to the ability to reflect the theoretical or empirical concept in order to improving the project management outcome in the practice. Okay, so why research skills is so important? So first of all, we need to understand a project environment, okay, is basically seen as what we call a social learning workplace, as it includes the project and its relevant stakeholders. So project itself is a unit of analysis if we are coming in from a research viewpoint. And then why it is a social learning? Because a project is not just about artifacts and deliverables, but basically it's a group of people with the relevant skill sets. You put them together to design and deliver the artifact, isn't it? But at the same time as well, you also have other stakeholders in the project that you need to respond to. Okay, so for example, your project sponsor, the end users, and then so on and so forth. So social learning itself happens among project team members and project stakeholders on the job when exchanging knowledge. Okay, so then when it comes to social learning, and then project management is also what we call an inquiry-based process or a research-based practice. Because for those of you who have worked in a project before, if you look into your day-to-day task, okay, so let's say that you are in charge of delivering a piece of artifact, or doing some analysis, business analysis, for example. You're gathering requirements and then trying to work out how the business requirements fits into the overall project scope. And what you are doing, basically the process is an inquiry-based process, because you're trying to gather the relevant data, process it, and then produce an artifact. So in a way, project management is also research-based, okay? So some of you may go back to the books, depends on which industry you are in. So for example, if you're managing a healthcare project, we do have, certain sort of like compliances that we need to go through. So there are rules that we need to follow when we are designing our artifact. Okay, so in this case, we could refer the project stakeholders are actually also a researcher, like you yourself is actually a researcher, and then who should continuously question your actions and decisions in project environments. So by all means that the research skills that we are talking about here is how you actually gather the information that will make a difference, and then how you process the information, and then how you disseminate the information to the relevant stakeholders. So research skills here will help you, so enable us to find solutions for the new problem. So by all means that we are not just keep doing what we know, but also identifying the potential challenges ahead, okay, and prepare for it. So for example, in this pandemic, if you look into, if you're working in a project environment, or even if you're working in services, retail, so on and so forth, it basically testing our knowledge. Now, how do we react to this change? Okay, and then that also sort of like put us into a situation that we need to think critically and think creatively as well. So what are the workarounds available for us? Okay, so at the same time as well, for instance, if we are talking about, the shift to virtual working, so we need to think about what are the potential challenges. So if you're working in a virtual team, so you as a team member, then you also need to react or respond to this change by knowing that, for example, what I should know in order to be efficient doing what I'm doing right now, but doing it virtually. And if you are managing a virtual team, the same thing as well. You also need to think about what are the challenges, not only you as a project manager will be facing, but what your team members will be facing as well. And then how do we cope? Do we have the resources to cope? So all the elements from project management will then come in order for us to manage this change. And at the same time as well, research skills also enable us to provide in-depth information, detailed analysis, and suitable advice to their clients. So this perspective has a lot to do with the data. And then depending on what is the position, like which position you are in a project itself. So let's say that if you are in a more strategic position, then obviously you need a lot more data in order to help you with, by making a good decision. And then if let's say that you are in an operational level, you also need to have, learn how to get the right information for yourself in order to do your job. Okay, and then moreover, research skills as well enable us to think critically when making a decision. So decision making is very common in project management, like I said before, from the strategic, tactical, and operational perspective. So for instance, so in the current pandemic, so strategically, we need to think about why we need to move online, and then what we need to do to cope with the market needs, because different industry, even like different sizes of organizations, the way we sort of like respond to this change is different. And then what specific timings, for us to launch the change. So these are, from the perspective from the strategic aspect that we need to look into. Then tactically, we also need to think about how we could manage our business and services virtually. And operationally is how do we actually manage the change. Okay, so research skills here is basically how do we actually train our brain in order to respond for critical thinking and also make the right decision. Then moving on. So research skills in managing projects for future workplace. So obviously we could use it to expand, because the thing is with the current pandemic as well, we know that most sectors, unless you really can't work from home, or else we are also expecting or anticipating to expand the virtual and remote working. And at the same time as well, if we are moving into that trend, we need to understand the digital capabilities for scaling the digital work. And again, when it comes to understanding the digital capabilities, we need to do lots of assessment. And then if you think about all these assessments, again, research skills will come in. Then after that, we also need to explore people experience. Okay, and then if you're talking something more sophisticated, for example, HR analytics, and then how do we use data to actually understand people experience? So it's not just assessment, but then using the analytics, for example, like in some bigger organizations as well, they actually start looking into the data or the information staff put in a forum to see, basically get a feel of how the staff is actually thinking and behaving in the organization, and also apply what I've learned in the practices, places, and technology. And again, when we are managing this change, we also need to sort of like apply what we have learned. Okay, so from books, practices in managing the change, and also we also need to measure the success, with the data in order to help with the continuous improvement, because this is, a change itself. There are stages, and then in every stages, and then for those who are in project management before, you also know that we have checkpoints that we need to measure whether how are we doing in this particular stage. And then when we are doing measurements, we need to do assessment. When we are doing assessment, we need to come up with criteria, so on and so forth. And again, all this will have a lot to do with the research skills. So that's why research skills right now will be even more important, because the thing is right now, we can't just do things as before the lockdown or before the pandemic. We always need to come up with new ways in dealing with changes, okay? So some of you now may ask me like, how do I, obtain the research skills? And then most of us will say, oh, I have the experience, I know how to get things done, so on and so forth. Yeah, that's fine. Learning of experience actually, giving you the benefits of understand the project context better. Okay, but then the thing is, what we would like to know is, apart from doing what I already know, or you already know, how do I improve? So in terms of coming up with something new, then we need to train our brain. So this is where the project management education comes in. So when we talk about project management education, so usually there are two sort of like options that you can look into. So should I do a master's degree in project management, or should I just go for professional certifications such as, the Agile, the PMP, or Prince2 and the chartered body of project profession. So Prince2 and APM itself is more relevant to the UK market. So it depends on what is your objectives really. So what a master degree basically offers you, not only just the hard skills, soft skills, so basically the methodologies itself of project management, which will be covered by the professional certification, but at the same time as well, you will pick up the research skills. So for example, how do you improve the way you gather your information, which is inquiry-based? So how do you actually, in the research perspective, we say data collection, but in the workplace perspective, it's basically gathering requirements. It's more and less the same thing. But then how do we actually gather the efficient requirements or gather requirements in a more efficient way? So it's inquiry-based, but at the same time as well, you can build your research skills by what we call active and collaborative learning. Active learning means that you are learning together with your peers. So doing a master's degree in applied project management will give you the opportunity to learn from your peers, and not just from your tutors, but learning from your peers. And then when you are doing the assessments or doing the work or activities in the class, you have the opportunity in what we call a collaborative learning. And then whereas like the professional certifications, usually the timing will be shorter, like maybe a week if you are talking about a classroom-based training. And then their focus is more on the methodologies itself. So for example, what are the stages that you need to follow in order to sort of like complete a project? So there are stark differences between these two provisions. So when it comes to doing a master degree as well, and then so we adopt what we call, because we know that project management is an inquiry-based, so it's an inquiry-based or research-based environment as well. So we adopt research-informed teaching as our learning strategy, where learners will be seen as a participant. And then this is where you will be doing, their lively seminar activities, particularly for, certain modules in the course. And also learners will be seen as a researcher as well. This is where, you will have the opportunity to sort of like look into something new that you've never sort of like learned before, the theoretical or empirical concept, and then try to understand, for example, if I'm learning the theory, for example, institutional theory, and then how this theory could help me to improve the project management practices, okay? And then you could apply them as well in the practical scenario. Then when it comes to collaborative and active learning, then we can further sharpen our research skills through group work, debates, and then discussions and challenges, and challenge the learning, challenge the status quo itself. Okay, so the constant training will sort of enable our brain to help us to think and to reason quicker. So particularly in decision making. So lastly, I would like to share how the research skills have helped lending, a good career for my former students in the master degree. So here we have Mathieu. So Mathieu used to be a former supervisor at a construction site, and he changes his career entirely after completing the course. And then he's now a project consultant, providing project management sort of like training. And then for Mathieu as well, one thing interesting about him, because he doesn't live in London. And then I still remember during that time when he came over to the classes, he used to drive 1.5 hours to 2 hours to the classes in London, depending on the traffic. And then he was always the first one to arrive at 9 o'clock on the Saturday morning. And then earlier than any of other students. who lives in London. So for him, it is the discussion, debate, and process of producing creative solution have sort of like helped him a lot. So, and again, this is basically, again, it's the collaborative, research informed, and also the active learning take place. Then after that, similarly, I think we have Elena here. So Elena is, her background is in hospitality, and then she used to do the course full-time, while having a full-time job designing the flight catering menu for British Airways. And then now, after completing the course, she's now a senior chef managing 500 chefs in Emirates Airline Catering. And then what particularly excites her in terms of the research skills is the cultural theory that she picked up in one of the modules in the course. So, and again, this is a different provision because for her, this particularly theory itself that she basically picked up from the course, and then she now applying this cultural theory in every single bit of her work in the United Arab Emirates. And then for her, the research in managing the multicultural team has landed her this exciting opportunity in the UAE. And then similarly, I also have Rashad. So Rashad, he's already a project manager, and then his specialty is in quality assurance, and then he's working in a multinational company. Okay, but interestingly as well, by doing a master's degree, and then what he has discovered is the theory and practices actually going hand in hand. And then as you can see here as well, he mentioned about, he graduated with the skills not only based on the theories of project management, but also with some methods to bring the academic knowledge closer to the business practice. So, and again, this is part of the research bit in the master's degree to help him to keep innovating the practices that he is already doing in his current job. Okay. Right, so that's all from me. As I said before, I am a practitioner turned academic. So showing on the right, as you can see, these are the organizations and clients I worked in the past. So therefore, I usually will discuss my experiences working with these organizations with students in the class. And some of the experience have in fact built into our learning materials. So I'm happy to stay connected if you would like to know more about research skills and then how actually it is relevant to your project management career. So these are my contact details if you would like to stay connected. Right, that's all from me. Any questions?
Okay, we do have one question from Charlene. She said that, hi, Dr. Tan, I'm a project manager in the construction industry, and she would like to know if PMP certificate is more suitable than a master's for someone who already has about 7 years of experience, I would assume, in the project management role.
Right, so Charlene, hello, thanks for the questions. So it's basically depending on what you are looking for. So because for Rashad, he is already a PMP certified before he came to do a master's with us. So depending on what is your objective really, if you are thinking about, just want to learn about the methodology itself, and if let's say that you want something relatively quick, because if you're doing a master's, we are talking about you need to commit 10 months. So in your case, if let's say that you want something quicker and you're just interested about, you know, the methodology itself, then I would recommend a PMP cert. But then if let's say that you would like to sort of like go beyond the methodology, because in a master's degree, okay, it weighs slightly different. So if let's say that you have a group of candidates, okay, and then some with only bachelor degree, but then you have a master's degree, then obviously you will stand out a little bit more from this perspective. And another perspective is that during that 10 months as well, apart from methodologies, and then you will learn a bit more about different aspects of project management. So for example, in the applied project management course, we have something that covers the project finance and marketing. So you're not just looking into the cost itself, the financing itself, but we'll also talk about the marketing management and then how you actually market your project. So something that is value added compared to, you know, the PMP cert. Then after that, we have one specific module that talk about, you know, team management, where you're going to learn about different cultural theories, how to set up different types of teams, and then what are the soft skills required. And then we also have one particular module which looks into, from the strategic perspective, how do you set up a portfolio? And then we also have, for example, if you're interested in terms of innovating the current project management practices, there's another module that talk about strategic innovation and change. And then lastly is the another module which looks into the consultancy as well. So if let's say that you're interested to be a consultant, now you're a project manager. So let's say that in the future you want to move into sort of like consultancy. So there's an opportunity for you here. So these two are basically very different. The offering is different, and then the timing is different. So I would suggest that you look into like what you are planning to commit and then what you're looking for. So if let's say that you're looking into, you know, something quicker and then just want to learn about the methodology itself, then probably PMP is more suitable. But then if let's say that you are interested in terms of going beyond the methodology and then you want to get, you know, a higher sort of like degree, then learn about different things that could enhance the practices, and then which can open more doors for you in the future. Because what I have seen from my students as well is some of my students are coming from different backgrounds. And then after doing this master's degree, and then some of them like sort of like moving from sort of like healthcare to IT. So basically it's like it will open more door for you by having a master's degree. So it really depends on what you're looking for. So I hope I answered your question, Shireen.
Okay, we have another question asking about the demand in terms of like project management career. How do you see it?
So the demand of the project management career, right? So after today, have a look into Glassdoor. You will see the project management or project manager, that keyword sort of like came up as a top in the search in the in Glassdoor, which is a lawyer website. So what this shows us is, you know, regardless what is happening, because every single industry, they somehow need project management. And then they also need, for example, different level of project management workforce. So project management is not just about, you know, you go in and then just become a project manager, but there are different roles that you can fill into the industry as well. So I would say that by looking by my own observation, this basically the project management sort of like job market hasn't been, you know, really affected even by the pandemic. People are still recruiting sort of like project management professionals, but particularly in 3 sectors: healthcare, I think logistics, and retail. So I hope I answered your question.
Okay. Okay, any more questions? Okay. Someone asked, because just now you mentioned HR analytics.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just now you mentioned HR analytics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how didn't catch that part about how it relates to project management research skills.
Okay. So for example, if let's say that you would like to know how good your people in your team or when you're doing your recruitment as part of project management, because it depends on like what stage you are in the project. So for example, in the past, I did put in a position that I have to recruit. For example, when we initiate a project, so we are part of the core team, and then once we have already set up the project, then we need to find relevant people to sort of like fit in the roles. So in the old days, if you look into the recruitment itself, so how do we scan the CVs? So we scan the CVs by using human, isn't it? But do you know that most big organizations these days, as the first pre-filtering, so instead of scanning the CV through like using human, like us reading through the CV, some of the organizations have started using HR analytics as the first sort of like pre-filtering before they pass the CV to somebody, to a human to read it. Okay, so that is one way. And there's another thing that we have seen as well is when you are in an organization, because when we talk about managing talent, experiences, so on and so forth, this goes hand in hand with HR. So basically the project manager has to work hand in hand with the HR manager in order to get the relevant people in the project. So if let's say that you're working in a project organization, which means that the core services of your company is delivering projects. And then you will find that, HR will then play an important role, because what happened in that organization is people are like the asset. They sit on the bench, and then they have their skills, so on and so forth. And then it's all running in a repository. And then when we form a project, so before we go out to recruit, the first thing first is, because we are a project organization, we will first look into what sort of talents that we have. And then when we look into the talent that we have, and then this is when we will use the analytics to sort of like skim through what are the skill sets that we required. And then if let's say that we have the talent, however, we need to further develop the talent, and then we could also use this technology as well to tell us like what sort of level of, so let's say that your company is doing data science, okay, and then your data scientists are currently equipped with knowing Python, Strata, R, MATLAB, so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden there is a new programming language coming out to do data science. And then now, instead of, if let's say that your organization is only having 10 people, then you probably, this analytics thing may not be really relevant. But what if you are a multinational organization focusing data science, and then you're talking about you have thousands of employees, and then you need to develop that kind of capability in order to very quickly analyze the skill sets of your employees, and then to see how you further develop the capabilities as well. So when we are initiating a project, so keep the story short, in summary, is when we are initiating a project. So if let's say that you're working in a project organization, so this is where HR analytics can come in. First is through recruitment. If you don't have the skill sets, you need to recruit. Another thing is to sort of like analyze the current skill sets that you have, and then how to continuously improving the current skill set. And I hope I answered your question. I can't hear Amanda.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so the same person is asking, is there a HR analytics software that you would recommend?
HR analytics software that I would recommend. I think if you look into things like, what is that called? can't remember on top of my head the one that I used in the past. Is it called People Analytics? Oh, I can't remember, but there is a very specific sort of like module that we used before, but I'm pretty sure that if you look into, for example, you know, those very big packages like SAP, etc., they all have already equipped with that. Or I think the one that I came across recently, IBM Watson, also doing some of it as well. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Maybe we can just have one more question if there is any. Okay. Someone said that they were looking at our brochure for the Masters in Project Management, and then there's this module on consultancy and the technological innovation. Yeah. So just wondering, can you explain a bit more about that module? What you teach, and what kind of assessment would that module have?
Right. So in that module, so basically we will look into how technologies sort of like disrupt our daily lives, which is the exciting one because it's called technological innovation. So the main thing we are looking at is disruptive innovation. So for example, how do we mean by disruptive innovations? Just to give you a very quick example, like social media. Think about the days before social media. So how do we use to communicate? We used to write letters, we used to go to see our friends, and then, but then with, you know, social media right now, it sort of like changes the way we communicate. And then even think about, like, for example, emojis. Emojis won't even, you know, sort of like, we won't even have emojis if we haven't got so many different types of social media happening. Because emojis now, if you look from the research perspective, is a type of language, graphical language, that, you know, we try to interpret our emotions. Because we all know that before the emoji time, when we are writing, text could only sort of like deliver a message, but a text won't be able to deliver the tone of the message. So that is the reason why we have emoji. But then if we talk about using emoji with our grandparents or, you know, our great grandparents, for them, what is that? You know, so for example, this is what we call disruptive innovation. Then after that, there's another thing that sort of like disrupts our daily life, is what we call platform-based business. So think about, for example, how Uber has changed our life. Like, for example, in Singapore, I think you guys are using Grab, yeah, Grab car, and then how it changes our sort of like the way we used to hire the taxi. And then, for example, Airbnb, how it disrupts the whole hospitality industry. And then, and what else? Like, for example, Deliveroo, or, you know, Grab, is it called Grab Eat or Uber Eat? Yeah, how it disrupt the whole entire, you know, the restaurant and cafe business. So we're also going to look into that. Then after that, there's another concept which is called digital ecosystem. Because if you look in how, you know, modern businesses is actually an ecosystem. And then businesses basically connects to each other by using digital tools. Okay, so we are also going to look into the concept of digital business ecosystem. So obviously there are also nitty-gritty about these three big concepts. Then these are the technological innovation part. And then obviously we also need to look into the consultancy part. And then this is where, for those who are interested to set up a consultancy business, or becoming an independent, you know, freelance consultant in the future, we will also give you some of the nitty-gritty about what are the different business models that you can get into. Then after that, and also what are the skills required to be a consultant. So not just about the soft skills itself, but the hard skills. So for example, if you would like to sort of like set up a consultancy business in the future, focusing on data science, so these are the skill sets that you need, the hard skills and the soft skills. But then at the same time as well, you could also look into for example, how this disruptive innovation could help you to expand the horizon or the horizon of data science, for example. So this is what we are going to cover in consultancy and tech innovation. And this is actually my module as well, which is something that it's very close to my heart, this module, because usually students who take this, because this module as well is it's either they're looking for a career change or they're already currently in an industry that heavily using technology, and they want to find if there's any other sort of like ways for them to further improve the way in using technology. So I hope I answered your question.
Okay. Lastly, any other questions?
Any other question for me?
Okay. Okay, in that case, if there are no other questions, thank you everyone for joining us today, and also thank you to Dr. Chekfoung Tan for conducting this webinar for us. I hope that all of you have learned a bit more, if not a lot more, about research skills in terms of project management. Okay, and I would also like to take this chance because most of the attendees over here, you have actually previously indicated interest in our University of West London's Masters of Science in Applied Project Management. All right, the course would actually be starting in September, 18th of September 2020 over here, and our applications are actually now open. So if you would like to know more about this, I would be sending out the brochure and also some key information to everyone shortly after this webinar. Okay, so maybe you can allow me just 1 minute to quickly go through some exciting facts about the course itself. Okay, so the program is, as I said before, conducted by University of West London. They are currently ranked number 12 in terms of computer science and information systems in the UK. Okay, according to the Guardian University League Table 2020. Okay, they are also actually the top modern university in London right now. So a university with, of course, good rankings over here. And also for the program itself is actually one of the shorter masters that you can find in Singapore, a 10 months part-time program. Okay, the program would also be mostly coursework based with just 2 modules with exams. Okay, so these are just some short information about the program, which for more information, I would be sending out the brochure shortly. So if all of you have no other questions, we will be ending the session here. If there are further questions after this or after reading through the brochure, do feel free to contact me. My contact details will be in the email as well. All right. Okay, so if everyone is good, then thank you all once again for joining us and have a good afternoon.